Hello everyone, this is Food is a Conversation Alumni Edition, session 82. So during these very short casual conversations, we introduce you our alumni members. They attended any of the educational programs what the Future Food Institute organized so far, let it be summer school or the Food Innovation and Climate Shaper bootcamps. And here I would like to share with you very good news as well. Our digital bootcamp won an award of the most innovative new program by Go Abroad. And this is a super recognition, especially given the fact that the digital bootcamp was born not even a year ago. And it started off as a prototype, and on the 25th of June, we are running the fourth edition of it, giving us the chance that we will have more than 200 climate shapers graduating after this program. And now I have already Olivia on screen. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Congratulations on winning the award. It's very well deserved.
Thank you. So Olivia is actually one of the graduates of our digital bootcamp. So you will hear a bit more about her experience as well. And so just give you some housekeeping information. You are more than welcome to post questions in the chat. We of course have already ours prepared, but if you have any questions for Olivia, please let us know. If you cannot stay with us the entire time, no problem, because the conversation will be posted on IGTV right afterwards. And I think that's it. I think I won't really waste too much more time with the introduction, and I will ask Olivia to introduce herself and tell us where she's dialing in from.
So my name's Olivia and I'm dialing in from Amsterdam. I've been here around 8 months and been working as a sustainability consultant. My background's in design engineering and I've worked across different sectors but have a very keen interest in food. So I've been working in this area too. As Julia mentioned, I was part of the cohort back in November, and I came across the Future Food Institute through some mutual connections. During the pandemic and COVID, I ended up doing a lot of online courses, and through one of them, met an amazing contact who did the course herself, and was part of the first cohort and had rave reviews for it, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be put in contact through her.
Yes, I think you are mentioning Gesina.
Gesina, yeah.
She was also already interviewed in this session, so check out her conversation in the library. So could you please tell the audience a bit about your experience, especially because you said you followed a lot of digital courses. So I would like to understand what kind of courses you took, how was the digital bootcamp compared to the others, what were the main learnings or exercises, what you enjoyed the most?
Cool. So, for example, one of the courses that I mentioned I took part in was run by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, looking at circular economy. So that one, in comparison to the Future Food Institute one, ran over the course of 10 weeks, with sort of like one weekly, sort of like more like lecture, and then you connected with other people on the course, and you had sort of like homework assignments throughout the week to develop your learning. So what I really liked about the Future Food Institute one was that there were more points of contact. So it ran over 4 weeks, and so there was more time. It was more intense time, so you built up kind of better network of people. And it was fantastic because there were people from all around the world, like all really passionate about food systems, but coming from different perspectives. I think we had sort of like chefs, like people who worked in supermarket supply chain, and like farmers. So it was nice just to connect with all those people from different aspects of the food system. And one thing I really enjoyed about the workshop was that you had sort of like pre-reading material. So when attending your sort of like lesson as such, you're already slightly informed, and therefore the conversations that we had amongst all the experts coming in and talking, but was also amongst our peer group, were slightly more informed than I think they would have otherwise been had we just come blind as such.
Yeah, very interesting. And I remember that your team for the hackathon was also working on a very interesting challenge, and you were one of the winners basically at the end. What we do at the graduation. Could you please tell a bit about that idea?
Sure. So our idea was linked to trying to promote more sustainable food behaviour, understanding that people don't necessarily know how to do this. And often it can be seen quite boring to like shift. And one medium which is particularly popular is TV. So within the team, one person had really good networks within the South African context to sort of like production program houses. So our idea, which is still sort of like ongoing, was to come up with a TV like competition. So within a local neighbourhood, people are competing to win money for various business ideas linked to aspects around food sustainability. So there's an element of education, but also linked to sort of an accelerator program where people are given the skills and resources to develop their idea and think in a more sort of lateral way. So that's currently still ongoing, sort of like trying to figure out the logistics of that. But yeah, and also trying to link in that community aspect. So linked to the context in a particular neighbourhood in South Africa where one of my teammates lives.
Exactly. Desigan was also mentioning this in his session, and I know that the pandemic kind of stopped the first prototype because you were aiming to work with university students.
Yeah.
But I really am excited to see how this go on, especially because we all know that the hackathon is part of the bootcamp and it's an exercise, but people from all over the world are put together and shaped in one team. So not always it is the case that the ideas are taken further or being worked on afterwards. But from each batch, we have a good one or two teams who are still very enthusiastic and they are trying to kick off the idea. So that's very nice to see. So you mentioned that you are a consultant. So we would like to hear a bit more about this. So if in the audience, whoever is there, would like to know what is a usual day for a sustainability consultant? What kind of projects are you working on? And how should we imagine your day-to-day activities?
So the consultancy that I work for is relatively small. The company itself is around 80 to 100 people, but the consultancy department is 40, that's kind of a small independent consultancy. And it operates across a range of different projects. So for example, I've worked on ones in the medical sphere, linked to biofuels, also linked to agricultural systems, as well as products and sort of how we can redesign them. So really consultants are the bridge between businesses and academics. So there's new theories being produced, like new ideas to test, but often businesses don't have the capability, be that time or resources, to like fully explore them. So the role as a consultant is to carry out more research, carry out data analytics, understand the context of the company and how they can make changes to shift towards more sustainable models. So we work with a range of different clients to do that for them. So that they can make more informed decisions as they try to hit various sustainability targets. Because often that expertise it may be there in house, but if it's not, that's why people seek sort of external validation as well.
Yeah. So how long are these projects usually? Because I understand you need to basically first get to know the company, right? You need to understand how are they acting, and I assume they provide you this information. Then you need to run your research and compare it with other actors in the globally or in their market, and then come up with the recommendation basically. So how long are these projects and how many people are working on it, or is that always depending on the client? Or yeah.
So I'd say it completely varies. Some of the projects I've worked on have been sort of like a 8 to 10 week sprint, where there's a lot of data already there from the client side. However, some people in the company have been working on projects which span the last 3 years. So it completely varies. It varies, on the client, on the scope of the project, what data is available, and sort of like what testing needs to be done.
Yeah, and do you see, like, I know it's a shorter time frame, but do you see that companies are moving towards these? Like, is there a demand for sustainability consultants? Are companies recognizing that there is need for change, and are they seeking external support?
In terms of like the business development side, I can't 100% say, but I think if you look at most companies' websites, and be that sort of like food, fashion, manufacturing, they'll probably have some sort of page linked to sustainability. I think it's obviously a very hot topic at the moment, and most companies are aware of this and looking to reduce their net emissions. And it's all very well like having a claim, but they need to sort of have tangible actions on how to achieve that. And that's why they perhaps seek out a consultant to understand where within, for example, if they're manufacturing, like where in their supply chain they are emitting the most, or how they could make changes within their design to reduce that.
Okay, makes sense. I also know that you currently are working on a project with Food for Climate League. I'm not sure how much of this research can be shared, but could you please tell us what you are working on?
Sure, I'll give you sort of a brief summary of what the project's about. So it's working to understand how to shift to more sustainable food behaviour patterns for people within the age bracket of 15 to 35 in the UK. So when I say sustainable food practices, I mean sort of a reduction in the amount of meat that people consume, eating more locally, eating more seasonally. Sorry, I don't know if I
now
cut
we
out
can
then.
hear you again. No problem.
Instagram timeout. So yes, I was just saying, so shifting people to eating less processed food, less meat, more local and more seasonally. Because I think often when people think about more sustainable food practices, they immediately jump to cutting meat out of their diet, for example. But then if you look at the options available, they tend to be very heavily processed with a lot of additives. So that's not necessarily the more sustainable option. And also it's a good perhaps alternative for like more junk food. But there's such a whole host of ingredients in them. How can we make people more aware of the food that they're eating and have the confidence to cook more kind of vegetarian whole foods?
Wow. So that also brings us back to the topic what we didn't mention at the beginning, that you are originally from the UK.
Yeah.
So you do have some insights from the market, and you maybe can observe also even your friends and family how they are consuming. But I can remember that we met your parents on the climate supper,
Yeah.
and they seem to be pretty well following a pretty sustainable diet for me.
I think they're both very into food, and especially sort of like the health concerns. But I think that's also an interesting point that as you are a little bit older, you perhaps have more money. So whilst they do eat meat, they're able to go to the butchers or buy more, food which has been raised in a slightly different way. Which I think with younger people, it's definitely affordability is a huge aspect of like how they're choosing to cook and eat.
Definitely. So I know that you are also part of another organization or a project, and so I would like you to explain how do you see your role as a climate shaper in your community, and what kind of actions are you taking?
So as I said before, one of the projects I'm part of is with it's called like a food waste charity. So in Dutch it's called Bootcamp. So it's connecting neighbourhoods. So what we do is we collect food from supermarkets and canteens, which otherwise would be thrown out, and we turn that into a 3-course, sometimes 4-course meal, which due to COVID is packaged up and taken to people in the community who perhaps are of lower socioeconomic group or suffering in some way. And this was also something that I was part of when I lived in London and Cambridge. I think it's not a solution to food waste, but it's definitely one way to show like quite how much is being thrown away. So for example, we collect food from one supermarket here on a Friday, and the amount of bread we get fills it's almost like 3 full pallets, which is just ridiculous. Things like bread and bananas are the most commonly thrown out food, and it's something that needs to heavily be readdressed.
Oh, banana, that's something new. Bread I knew about. Also in Hungary, bakery products are a biggest amount of food category to be like found wasted or discarded. And yeah, I always ask myself, if you know that you every single day throw away so much, then why don't you order less?
Well, I think it's to do with the shelves. Like it's that idea of like presenteeism in the workplace, but also on our supermarket shelves. As consumers, we're so used to walking in, and we've got the option of 20 different pastries, 30 different types of bread. But if we had 5 types of bread, then supermarkets would have a more simplified stream of what they're supplying, and perhaps we would minimise our waste. But as consumers, especially in the West, we're so used to having that ample array of choice. If that were to be taken away, I think there would be a degree of outrage.
Yeah, definitely. I remember once I talked to one of the bakeries in Berlin who was offering his leftover through Too Good To Go, and I was shocked when I arrived to pick up my bag because his counter was still full, and he was closing down in like 5 minutes. So it's pretty clear that all those products are either given to Too Good To Go consumers, or they are ending in the trash. And I think this mindset, or what they believe, that consumer need to see the exact same counter at 5 minutes before they close down, or in the morning. And I think we all understand how things work, and I won't be less enthusiastic about the quality of the food in a bakery if I know that there is less from the selection available when I come 5 minutes before closing down. I think people start to understand this as well, or at least I hope so. Or maybe I'm just talking in that bubble who already started to recognize this issue. But I think we just have to have these conversations with more and more people, and there will be a snowball effect.
But I think it's also to do with people's awareness of food and how to cook and prepare. So say you've decided on a recipe and you make your list and you go to the shop and it says that you need ciabatta, but there's only focaccia. Like knowing that that doesn't really matter. And the same for, maybe not the best example, but the same for a range of different fruit and vegetables. If you're going to the supermarket and you've decided that you want to make a recipe which has peppers, but peppers aren't in season and therefore they're not on the shelves, there's other substitutions you can make, and just people having that confidence to do that and knowing that it doesn't actually affect the dish that much.
Yeah, definitely that confidence. I think a lot of people are afraid because they believe if they follow a recipe gram by gram, that's the only way how they can get a delicious meal at the end. And that's not true. And yes, we also had project Learning Kitchen Roadshow in Germany before, where we went through, and it was with Generation Z, so students who just started university. So they basically just came out of their parents' house. So all of their food choices were made for them before. So they ended up in these bigger cities maybe, or university towns, and they had to make their own food choices with a certain amount of budget. Oh, wow. I was also shocked because some of them didn't recognize some of the vegetables. And that was like, wow, you are 20 years old. How is that even possible? You don't know what a cauliflower is. So yeah, I hope that people can get this feeling that it's rather combining flavors and certain grains. Only because we are used to rice, that doesn't mean that you cannot eat buckwheat and other different grains as well. Yeah. Step by step, with certain level of communication and hopefully education, we will reach this. So there is always one question I ask from everyone at this on these conversations, and that's, how do you picture your preferred food future? And you can be very utopistic. You can also stay realistic. It's up to you.
I was thinking about this earlier, and I think for me it's just like having more option of where to buy food and having more time. So it's readdressing our lifestyle slightly. I know for me personally, like I think about food a lot. I'm really conscious. But when I don't have much time, I then default going to the nearest supermarket because it's convenient. So what we need to do is make it convenient to make that sort of sustainable choice. I was reading something the other day about how so many countries around the world don't meet their quota of vegetable intake, as recommended by WHO, but from Asian countries, at least a third do. And that was partly attributed to the fact that they have markets which they go to on like a more day-to-day basis. And so like if you've got that time to like plan and cook your food, how does that impact what you choose to eat? How does that impact the amount of waste you have at home? If you have a smaller fridge, for example, do things get lost at the back? Probably not. So I think for me it's sort of just, I don't know, it's just like so many different ways to address it, and it's so difficult to come up with one idea. But I think it's readdressing our lifestyles so we have more time, so that we can appreciate and cook food more, which then in turn will influence our shopping patterns, and therefore we won't be defaulting to the one large supermarket, which of course in many ways is going back to how people used to shop sort of like 50 years ago, pre-convenience shops. So I think it's that whole thing of not reinventing the wheel, but just understanding points in history where people perhaps had a closer connection to their food. And I think also it's making sure that rural communities are more affluent. So obviously people tend to move to urban environments to seek a sort of better life as such, and then doing so become more disconnected from agricultural systems and food systems. So how do we make it so that people want to stay in rural areas? And I think the pandemic has shown, for especially lots of young people living in urban environments, that they perhaps don't need to be there and they do want that connection to nature. So how do we kind of optimize the current situation we're in to try and make that happen?
Yeah. And I think I would like to combine your future with some of the previous sessions' future, where we also said we would like to have food procurement places where every choice is the right choice, where the consumer doesn't need to think and compare the different items on the shelf and think twice what to lift off, but that all of them are produced and procured on a way what we believe is the best for both human health and also the health of our planet.
No, 100%. And I think that's it, was making the choice easy. There's lots of talk, I know there's like certain academic circles about having clearer, carbon labeling on food projects, food products, and clearer sort of like climate initiatives. But actually, for the majority of people, they don't want that. It's too overwhelming. I often feel overwhelmed buying food. So yeah, as you said, like if you just have, when you're at the point of buying food, it's decisions taken away from you as to what's good and bad. It would make everything much simpler.
Exactly. So, Olivia, thank you so much. It was a lovely conversation. Thanks for sharing your experiences and what you are doing. And for the audience, if you didn't manage to listen to us from the beginning, don't worry, because the conversation will be posted on IGTV right after this. And please watch along with the other 81 sessions what we had already. I always say it's better than any new series on Netflix, because you will basically hear about different food systems all over the world and how our climate shapers are trying to contribute to a more sustainable food future. So thank you so much again and have a lovely day.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.